Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. It's great to see you out there today. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax, and let's chat about what is happening in the sky above. Of course, all eyes are on the lunar eclipse that is occurring tomorrow. Our eyes here in the Northern Hemisphere won't be so closely on it. The eclipse happens for us during the day. The moon isn't visible. But for some of you in the Southern Hemisphere, you will get a glimpse of this particular lunar eclipse. But just because we aren't visibly connected to that eclipse does not mean that we are not affected by the eclipse. This is like the wisdom that we know about astrology, that no matter what is going on above, whether you're viewing it with your eyes or not, it is still something that could be occurring. It is occurring, but it still has an effect on you, even if you don't visibly see it. And this particular eclipse, as we've been talking about off and on all week, it's a doozy. It's a big one. And it's happening at the very crux of the Saturn and Pluto and Mercury conjunction on Sunday. And it is bracketed here with Uranus turning direct. It is happening at the same time we have a superior conjunction of the Sun and Mercury. So we have a lot of energies kind of building up and coming together at this same time. So I thought today we would first take a look at what is going on, what it is that happens when the moon is in Cancer. And we've talked about this before, but literally that's where the moon is going to be during the eclipse, is in the sign of Cancer. So if we can understand Cancer, maybe we can even understand a bit more about what might be playing out in our personal lives. And then I want to take a look closer in at the lunar eclipse itself, because something happened yesterday in the news that absolutely personifies, exemplifies, and exactly mirrors to us what this particular eclipse is all about. It came out of the blue, and it has to do with the Duke and the Duchess of Sussex, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. So I see people checking in with us already this morning. Good morning, Debbie Hedden and Colleen McSpirit. And I'm sure others of you are watching or will be checking in with us as time goes on. So let's talk a bit first then about what the moon in Cancer brings to us. So when you were sleeping, the moon came out of the sign of Gemini and entered into the sign of Cancer. In fact, for me, it was just a little after midnight. For all of you on the East Coast, it would have been more like 3-ish in the morning, 3:43, I think it was. So we woke up this morning with a new energy in the field. And that energy, of course, is the one that's going to carry us through the eclipse. So today, the moon in Cancer is in a sextile, a 60-degree relationship, a good relationship with the planet Uranus in Taurus. Now, when I think about the moon and Uranus come together, I think about sometimes emotional explosions, very powerful emotional reactions to things that are potentially happening in your life or happening around you or even happening out in the world, because Uranus does things in surprising ways. And of course, the moon in Cancer is emotional, but they're working together well. So maybe it's a very positive reaction as opposed to the more negative aspects. But sometimes those aspects that have ease and flow with them, and a sextile does seem to have a sort of good flow going, it can easily mean the exacerbation of the more negative expression as well. So we want to watch ourselves today in how we emotionally react to things that are going on around us. I had an example of this out of my own morning, where I could feel the emotion rising in response to something that my husband said. And it was stupid. There was no reason to feel what I was feeling, except that it just hit me wrong. And that's kind of the thing that we're working with, where something just triggers. I haven't had a time yet to really look at what did it trigger within me. I'm not sure that I really even have to do that, because I was able to sit with that for a few moments and meter out my response, right? I didn't have to react to the feeling that I had, but I observed that feeling within myself and allowed myself to just move through it, No judgment on my part about what I was about to do or say, or the fact that I stopped myself from doing or saying anything. So that is kind of that. It was a surprise. It just sort of came up out of nowhere. And we may have many of those kinds of events in our lives over the next day or two or three, or maybe even four. Let's see, today's Thursday. So maybe even through Sunday and Monday of next week. So watch yourself and your response to things, right? That's the key, is that we're always responding to something, right? The stimulus in the outer world provokes us at times into behavior that we can be conscious about, that we know that we're behaving in that way, or that we've unconsciously gotten into. And by the time we've reacted to that, it keeps like a snowball growing and growing and getting bigger and bigger. So watch your emotional expression for at least the next couple of days, and don't be surprised if you get surprised in how it is that you're feeling, or in what you expect, the way that you would expect to react versus maybe how you do react. So there's that. Also today, the moon is in an opposition to Jupiter in Capricorn, excuse me. The moon is in Cancer, Jupiter in Capricorn. They are in an opposition to one another, and that can sometimes lead us to overindulgence, over-imbibing, overdoing, making things bigger than what they have to be, sort of like taking a magnifying mirror and things get bigger, right? So the moon sometimes with Jupiter can magnify that, and it can also then create an emotional response that is over the top compared to what is happening. And again, we just want to watch for that and know that that's a potential that's out there in the field, and be aware of your surroundings and be aware of what it is that's going on in here and how you might react to what's showing up. All right, so when we're talking about Cancer, obviously, as we've been talking about already this morning, we're dealing with emotional energy. And that emotional energy, like the moon, can be changeable, which i.e. equals moodiness, right? So if you're finding yourself moving through the day and at times you're happy and joyful and followed by, anger or upset or melancholy, don't be surprised. It's what happens when the moon is moving through Cancer. It's a sign that it rules. So the moon has much more power in the moment, that in the days that it's moving through the sign of Cancer. So moodiness and sensitivity. That may be what it was that got me this morning with my husband, sensitivity, because it's almost like our nerves are a little bit on edge. I don't even want to qualify it as nerves, more like your moods are on edge, and literally one small thing can trigger that sensitivity and you become more and more reactive to what's happening. So we want to be aware of that. And in the case of that kind of a situation where you have an emotional response, we want to be understanding. We want to extend understanding both to whoever it is that might be the trigger, as well as to our own selves in being triggered or allowing ourselves to be triggered. So understanding, because this is kind of loving, nurturing energy. When we lean into the good part, the high part, then we're leaning into that compassion and that nurturing energy. The moon in Cancer also represents home, right? Home and family and the familiar. So today's a day likely where we may feel uncomfortable when we're dealing with the unfamiliar. If you're having to drive someplace today where you've never been before, or having to deal with people that you've never dealt with before, maybe you're starting something new, or you're in unfamiliar surroundings, this could be a day that triggers maybe some vulnerability for you, or a little bit of that fear feeling of, I don't know what to expect. Because while the moon is in Cancer, we crave what's familiar. And what's familiar to us is usually home and family and our usual day-to-day routines, the places that we go to, the workplace, or the places we shop, or the places that we hang out with, or the people that we hang out with on any given day. So today we may feel that pang, wanting to be home. We want to be connected to our families, our roots, our traditions, and also our ancestry comes up during a day like this. I was just noticing, it was kind of funny. Just as I was going on air this morning, I had two back-to-back comments, not comments, but uh, messages coming in from ancestry.com. As some of you know, I do a lot of genealogy, and I've been able to trace my family roots, where before I kept hitting up to closed doors or empty strings. Now I have opened up this whole wide world of connection genealogically by using Ancestry, by getting a DNA test done. And some of you know that story. If you're new here and you don't know that story, maybe someday I'll share that again. But genealogy is a part of Cancer energy. I have a Cancer rising, so of course I would be interested. My moon is in Cancer. Excuse me, not my moon, my Mercury is in Cancer. So my heart and my mind are in the sign of emotional energy. So we may find out, maybe we have more interest in, chasing down leads and around our ancestry, or maybe we're dealing with healing in our ancestral lines. We're not just healing the issue that I might be experiencing, but if you're in the healing field, you may be dealing with people's ancestral lines. If you're seeing a healer today, that may be a connection that person makes as well. There is the energy of mother and nurture versus smothering that comes up with the moon in Cancer. It's great to be mothering, and it's great to be nurtured, and it's great to be the nurturer, but when do you cross the line, right? When does that mothering turn into smothering? And that may be an issue also that comes up for the next couple of days. And issues around intimacy also come up here. There's a couple of different signs that point us to intimacy, and Cancer is one of them, but it's more the soul connection here, the intimacy of soul to soul contact, and the compassion and tenderness that we can show to one another when we can tap in from the soul level and not just from this physical earthly level. If we only tap in from the earthly level, then we want to judge everybody and everything and criticize everyone and everything, including ourselves. Where if we tap in from a soul connection, we see the truth in that everybody's on this planet in the same boat, struggling for the same things: love, attention, prosperity, abundance. And as such, then we can extend more of a compassionate, loving heart to people during the time that the moon is moving through Cancer, as long as we don't get into our judgmental selves, right? So the things to watch out for while the moon is in Cancer is that defensive edge that Cancer gets, right? Cancer, the crab, they have those big giant claws. They're ready to strike out and pinch you. They are covered by a hard shell that, belies a very soft inner tenderness within. So there is the tendency sometimes on the negative to be very defensive, to be insecure, and likely that defensiveness comes up because of a feeling of insecurity or a fear of not being good enough, or even a lack of confidence in oneself. So we want to watch out for emotional reactions born out of that feeling of insecurity, defensiveness, not worthy, low confidence, etc. All right, so hopefully everybody's understanding all of that. Good morning, Allison. Good morning, Susan Bronlin. Great to see you. Sherry Davis, nice to see you. Marissa, good morning to you as well. And Rebecca, great to see you. Bob, hello. And Judy Wheeler joining us again. Sherry says timely info. And Judy says, yes, I'm all about my home today. Judy says, I did my DNA test. Well, funny thing, Judy, apparently my father was a very prolific baby maker. And so funny thing, I found out I've got more than 13 brothers and sisters when I only initially knew of one or two. It's too funny. Linda, good morning to you. And Bob says there is a fine line between caregiving and caretaking, indeed. And Judy says, yes, I'm more connecting with my soul and compassion. And that's literally the high side of the energies as we see them in the sign of Cancer. Now, I want to transition over here a bit. If anybody has any questions about the eclipse, please put your questions there in the chat. Tomorrow, we're going to go a little bit deeper into this, as in the one thing that I could really help each of you with is the fact that we know it's going to be at 20 degrees of Cancer. We know that. And if you know your chart, then you know where 20 Cancer is, hopefully, right? It's easy to find the sign Cancer. It looks like the number 69 on its side. And if you can find that symbol in your chart, then you're looking at the house that will be affected by the lunar eclipse, which occurs again at 20 degrees of Cancer. And tomorrow, then, we're going to take a look at what the meaning of the lunar eclipse in those houses might be for each of you. So tomorrow's show, you might want to come with your natal astrology chart, so you have that in hand. And you might even want to have your human design chart, because we'll probably cross into some territory around that as well. So for today in general, let's look at the full moon lunar eclipse. So there are a couple of key phrases that jump out at me right away as soon as I think of the eclipse across an axis, right? We've got the full moon on one side of the axis, we have the sun at the other, and this is why it is a full moon, right? Because they're in opposition to one another. So if we were to look at the chart, we would see the moon over here and the sun over here, or however it would be lined up in your particular chart. And it just so happens that in this case, this time, the moon and the north node are holding a bucket, if you will. So I'm going to show you the chart, and hopefully you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So here's the moon and the north node, and this is the previous lunar eclipse because we haven't had this one yet. And it's holding space here, while all of the rest of the planets appear to be in a bucket, if you will, over the cross of the top. Now, in your chart, it may look a little bit different, right? This one just happens to have everything in the upper quadrant, but yours may be on one side or the other, or it could be at the bottom of the chart rather than the top. But in some way, this pattern is holding sway in your own transiting astrology chart right now, where it seems like the moon and its connection in Cancer is holding the weight of all of the rest of the planets up in this area, particularly the ones over here in Capricorn. And so what we see in Capricorn is it's the natural ruler of the 10th house in a chart. It rules everything to do with your professional or your public life, your worldly self. Right? That's its meaning. So often we equate that meaning with your career or the profession that you choose. How it is that you show up in the world, or how the world interacts with you, is shown by that 10th house. So it doesn't necessarily show the kind of work you do, but the 10th house does show where it is that you would interact with the worldly or the public or the more professional world. Now, the moon sitting at the other end is all about home and family and your personal lives, right? Your personal lives. The moon brings it home to me, right? To your individual self and your own needs and your own need to balance or harmonize these two opposing forces in your life, your professional life and your personal life. So nothing epitomizes this more and really shows us this than what happened yesterday with the Duke and the Duchess of Sussex, which is Meghan Markle and Harry. I almost said Harry Potter, but not Harry Potter. The Prince of what is he now? He's the Prince of Sussex. I don't know. I don't profess to know much about the ruling families or anything like that. But it is interesting to note that yesterday they sort of claimed they pretty much made a declaration of independence for themselves away from the more traditional royal duties that they're expected to partake in. So apparently they were a part of the senior royal family, and as such, they had to do things in a specific sort of way. They were funded by the crown or funded by the taxpayers of Britain. And you know, none of this being their own choice. This is just how things have always been done traditionally through the royal family and the connection to the British Parliament. And they pretty much said, we're not going to do it that way anymore. Not only are we not going to do that anymore, we're taking control of our own personal lives, right? They're requesting more privacy. They're requesting that they be able to balance their home, their family, and their private lives versus the public personification and their profession, right? So rather than being both personally and professionally the royal family, they want to be able to have their own autonomy, their own home, their own family life, and then partake in the royals, in the work that they can do that benefits them and or benefits the world or benefits the Commonwealth and the countries involved. So that's the total epitome of what's happening right now, right? The need for us each to balance those factors in our lives. And this has been ongoing. This, the eclipse brings it home, brings it in personally, and kind of lays down the gauntlet. It says this is the time where you have to make that choice. The lunar eclipse itself often is a door closer or a door opener. The solar eclipse more often than not opens the door. The lunar eclipse, such as what we have tomorrow, is the door closer, right? It's that, okay, we're done with that chapter. And it appears that the Duke and the Duchess are done with this chapter that says we have to do things this old way. We're going to make the way in our world. So their declaration included they were stepping back from those royal duties. They were not going to use the same, I think it was called the rota, which is the plan that they use for divulging news, and it's not going to go the way that things have always gone. They're going to be more independent that way. And they're also saying our private lives are our private lives, and the work that we do is going to be self-sustaining. They're not going to depend upon the money coming from the royal family as much. They want to be able to become independent earners and become financially independent. It's amazing to me. When I heard that yesterday, I was thinking, wow, that sounds a lot like the theme of this particular lunar eclipse. And it is. As I started to write this out this morning, I went, it's the total epitome of this. Now, in your personal life, it's not going to go just like the Duke and the Duchess. I mean, come on. But they show us the high side, the potential here. And it is upsetting, definitely, to the other members of the royal family that had no idea that this was coming up. I can't imagine that they have no idea, because they said it pretty plainly a few weeks back when they did the little documentary that, this wasn't sustainable in their lives. So they wanted to make a change. So what is not sustainable in your life? What hasn't been? What have you been already knowing for the last several weeks that this isn't sustainable anymore? And trust me, it might not just been of the last few weeks. It could have been for the last year. What is it that you're engaged with that sees you overly in the home and private world, or overly in the worldly professional life? What is it that you need to harmonize? Now, it may not just be playing across the personal versus the professional, because those are literally the meanings of Cancer and Capricorn when they're across the 4th and the 10th houses. But in your own personal chart, it could be happening anywhere else, right? You've got other choices here of where it could be happening. So, for example, in my own personal chart, this lunar eclipse will occur in my 12th house. And the sun will be at the opposite end in my 6th house. And that focuses on how I do my work and the place I do my work, the work I do, the people I work with, and the moon at the other end in the 12th kind of telling me I need to come out of I need to come out of hiding. I need to move out of my reclusive sort of area that I'm in, that the space that I'm in where I like to hide. I like to be a hermit. And so that will be something that likely I'm grappling with. How do I become more well-known? How do I get my face out there? Do I want to get my face out there any more than what I have it already? So in your own chart tomorrow, that's why we're going to be looking at the houses. Where it is in your chart is going to help you determine how it is that you're meant to be focusing your energies. But irregardless of your chart, I bet you already know. I bet you already have an inkling that you've been watching this sort of coming up over time as to where Capricorn and Cancer are in your chart, and how is it that you want to show up in the world in a very more powerful, emotionally stable way. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Now, here is also pressure. We spent time, I think it was yesterday, talking about, or maybe the day before, talking about in your human design, the 2 pressure centers, the head center, the top center, which is a center for pressure. The pressure is to be inspired, but also to answer questions. And those questions may not even be your own questions that you're pressured into trying to answer. The other center is the root center, which is the center for pressure to do, right? And that's where the moon is going to be. That is where the sun gate is. And that is also where the earth is sitting, right? Both of the sun and the earth are on that root center, the pressure center, i.e. the eclipse is putting us in this need to do something, to resolve something, to complete something. So all of us may be feeling this inner pressure building to get something done, or to make a decision, or to take some kind of action. So when I talk about the need to do, let's not let it be something that comes up from the pressure, which means that literally you may just do anything just to relieve that stress, that tension, that pressure. Instead, follow your type and your strategy, and secondarily your authority, so that you make decisions that are good for you, right? So we have an opportunity to explore and act on our emotional needs during this time. What is it that would support you from an emotional standpoint? Because often what happens is that we're so worried about what other people think or what other people want us to do that we sacrifice or put on the side burner our own emotional needs. Then that creates an emotional gut check or an emotional reaction from us that then can create conflict or a struggle. So instead, do what's good for you based on your own emotional needs. This is about becoming emotionally mature. It is not your job to make other people feel better about your decisions. It isn't. That isn't the path. The path is for you to do what's correct for you, what feels good to you, and then let other people decide what they're going to do with that. It's not your concern how they're going to react, right? Now, I'm not saying go out and just hurt people by doing things. That's not it at all. It's being very clear about what your emotional needs are, what supports you emotionally, and taking action from that place. Now, because it's a full moon, if the lunar eclipse is always a full moon, there's the possibility for epiphanies, for revelations, for that aha moment, right? Where the light bulb turns on. The full moon is epitomized by the light, right? I woke up in the middle of the night last night, and I thought I thought the sky had cleared up, and because it was so light, instead it was snow. It had snowed, and so the reflection of the light, any light, was just brighter. But there's that idea then that there's light, right? There's lighting up the dark or the unseen, or the part that's remained hidden from us. So what's been hidden becomes apparent, becomes seen. So we have that opportunity then for those revelatory pieces of information, or those things that come to us and we're like, that's it. And then also the full moon brings fulfillment in some way. Fulfillment maybe of an intention that you set with the new moon, of maybe something that you've been working on for an extended period of time. So we get closure, or we get completion of something. So we can look to that as well. Now, where the bad news, if you will, I don't even want to characterize it as that, but where the struggle or the conflict comes in for a full moon, or a lunar eclipse in particular, is when we've been really hesitant to make a change or to do something, to end something. And inwardly, then we are in chaos, or we're in conflict because we know what we need to do, but we haven't wanted to do it because to do it feels final, or it doesn't feel, maybe we're afraid, right? We're afraid that if we let go of something over here, that puts us in a void and we won't know what to do over here yet. We can't be afraid. We can't be letting fear guide us anymore. We have to be able to embrace the things that are happening. So the universe, when you're reluctant to let go of something that you're hearing over and over again, let go of this, go that direction, then the universe has a time like a lunar eclipse where it can just close the door for you. It can just do something that makes you have to change. And that's where the conflict comes in. That's where lunar eclipses and solar eclipses get a bad rap, because sometimes we are resistant to what we know needs to be done. And so the universe paves the way, right? It blows up the rock that's been in the way so that you have no more excuses, right? It's done. So instead of then leaning into that kind of fear and that kind of drama that ensues when, the universe seeks to help you move forward, do it for yourself, right? If you're not sure what is happening, look, where's the drama right now in your own personal life, right? Whether it's an outward drama or an inward drama, what area of your life is that happening in? Is it in your relationships? Is it in your health? Is it in your career? Is it at home? Is it in your finances? Is it in feeling too constrained? All of these kind of clues give you an indication of what it is that you need to either let go of or push through or move forward into. And literally, there can be a dramatic turn of events in the house that is where the eclipse is happening for you personally, or where 20 degrees of Cancer is. It's almost like the universe or the cosmos is giving you a push. It's a cosmic push to evolve or to change, to let go of or to release something, to deal with the fear that you've been feeling, to be vulnerable, to dare a little bit, to get out of your own way and to move forward, to be less of the Cancer crab that pulls inward and more of the open crab that can move maybe a little bit sideways, but can still make forward progress. So here's your opportunity, guys, to clear out your patterns, the blocks, whatever it is that's held you back, that stopped your forward progress. This is the time for you to be able to restructure, rebuild, reformulate what needs to happen for you to be more sustainable, for you to have more success. So, not a bad thing, I don't think. I know for some people it might be a little bit difficult. I know I feel it inside myself. So let's see, comments on that. Rebecca, would you say Cancer is grandmother energy? Yes, I would. Is that Capricorn? My taxi driver in Copenhagen had been my grandma's neighbor in Sweden a few years back. Not a coincidence. Grandmother energy is mother energy to an nth degree, right? To the next degree. So as such, I always think of, Cancer energy more as grandmother. But maybe it's the blend of Cancer and Capricorn, Rebecca, where we get the wisdom, the worldly wisdom of Capricorn blended with the mothering, nurturing energy of Cancer. So a hybrid, if you will, of the two. Capricorn does rule authority, and our authority meaning authorship, right? Our authentic selves. And maybe grandmothers and grandfathers, to some extent, the same thing, have earned the right through experience, through life experience, through the ups and downs, to claim that authority. So yet they don't lose their nurturing, mothering, caring qualities. So I would say that grandmother has gained Capricorn traits, while grandfather perhaps has gained more of the Cancer mothering traits. So they're a good blend of both of those energies. That's a great question. Lynn, good morning to you. Judy asks, does astrology and your life path number go hand in hand together? I want to say yes, it does. But I want to say this about, in my experience I was a numerologist before I was an astrologer. And as I learned more and more, or remembered more and more astrology over time, I've come to think of the life path number as being more of a blend of the sun, the moon, and your rising in your astrology chart. So if you took those three and you made a new entity, a blended energy out of those three, it would really be more like your life path number in numerology. So, and that may take some digging, that may take some more inner knowledge or some more literal knowledge of astrology in order to see that truth. But for instance, I'm working a sixth life path in numbers, but that doesn't feel very Gemini to me, right? So if I try to equate my life path number with just the sun, I immediately come up against sort of an issue, right? However, when I take and I add my Cancer rising to that, I go, okay, I get that, right? The home, the family, the domesticity of the six, the creative energy. And then if I take my moon in Virgo and I add that to it, the need for balancing these things comes up. So I think it's a combo. I know that doesn't make a really good, strong answer, but if you know your own chart, look at those three things and then compare what that might look like, if it were one entity versus your number, your life path, and see how that fits for you. All right. And again, numerology, very much like astrology, isn't just one number. There's, these different, things that come together to create the whole of who you are. So you can't just say, yeah, I'm a life path 6. And so this is, because then that would be the same thing as trying to be just the Gemini. And that would sort of cut you off from the rest of the energies that comprise your wholeness, right? So we want to look at the whole, not just the one piece. So Judy, I'm a retired master gardener and landscaper. Woohoo! Fun stuff. Colleen, yes, I know. Kristen, good morning. Linda Marie, good morning. Judy says emotionally secure. I've always been moved by the moon. I think we've all, as human beings, been moved by the moon. You all have the moon in your chart. Some of you have it in Cancer and you're more moved by the moon in the chart. And some of you may even have your moons in Capricorn. And if you have your natal moon in Cancer or Capricorn, or maybe even Aries or Libra, you may be feeling pushed you may have been feeling pushed for a while. And as the moon in your own chart is hit by a square, if you're a Libra or an Aries moon, a square from those planets that are in Cancer and Capricorn, a conjunction if you're in Capricorn, and an opposition if you have your moon in Cancer. So those moon placements may have really been under the pressure for the last year and on in through this lunar eclipse, and possibly even on through the first 6 months or so of this year. The pressure should be relieved a little bit for some of you as 2020 comes to an end. I feel like this is a year where we have these, ups and downs going, and you guys may be more reflective of that because of the placement of your natal moons. Jacqueline Lopez, good morning to you. And Rebecca says, yes, I love that. A hybrid. It's a perfect word. I love that word. Belated good morning to you too, Laura. And Judy is a life path 4. Of course you are. I should have seen that, right? You like to be able to categorize, to have things make sense, to be methodical, to have a plan, to be analytical. Love it. And of course, then if you're a life path 4, that mirrors the universal year for 2020. So this might be a very good year for you to get some things done, to build some strong foundations for a great future, to get a great project maybe that you've been working on behind the scenes launched. Just don't become a workaholic. That would be the only thing I'd say here. Angela Mather-Keel, good morning. Marissa says natal moon in Cancer, pushed is an accurate word for sure. Yes, I feel for you. I feel like my daughter has her moon in Cancer, and I've watched this for her all year long, right? That being pushed and pulled and tugged and having to always seemingly deal with these opposing forces. And if your moon is in Cancer, then the opposing forces are Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. So of course, right? But this too shall pass. And think about how much stronger and more stable, more secure you will be at the end of all of this push me, pull you energy. So if that makes you feel better, then go with that. Allison says, geez, can I get some relief, please? Cancer moon. It'll come. But, even, wherever Cancer is in your chart is a place where you may be feeling pressure. So, you're not alone. If your moon's in one of those 4 signs that I mentioned, You're really not alone in this. It just may be more poignant for you, like more of a feeling of I've got to get over this or I've got to get through this. But just relax and go through this process. The universe is not leaving you barren. It is leading you to something profound, leading you to something prosperous. You might not be able to see that right now in the haze of the emotional energy that's around it. But trust it, trust the universe, trust in your own inner knowing that you'll be in the right place at the right time for the right opportunity with the right people. The universe is not going to withhold anything from you. If it is authentically yours, it will be yours. That is faith, right? And that's what Cancer and Capricorn also have us deal with, especially now that Jupiter's in Capricorn. We have to have faith that even though we're going through this chaotic sort of period, it's like growing pains, right? When you were 12 and 13, remember your knees hurting, your back hurting, your arms or my fingers would hurt. And it's that growing, right? The growing phase. We're feeling those growing pains as we begin to move forward here. But you will move forward. Jacqueline Lopez says, does the full moon eclipse affect us where we have Cancer in our chart? And if so, does the degree matter? Yes, and yes. The degree matters. 20 degrees matters. Because if you have other planets that are sitting between, say, about 18 to 25 degrees of any of the signs, the eclipse is like sending bolts of energy out toward those degrees. So if you don't know enough about astrology to know the degrees, don't worry about it. Just look to the last degree areas of the last 10 degrees of the sign of Cancer, or just look to where Cancer is and understand the house that it's in, and you will have a good idea of what's happening. Or tune inward. If you just tune inward, you won't even need this map, right? You'll be able to tell my relationships are really under fire. Or there's something really important going on for me in terms of my career and how I want to show up in the world, my friendships, my community, my inner self. Wherever you're feeling that pressure is likely where that eclipse is. Surprise yourself. Predict for yourself based on what's going on in your life where that eclipse is, then go check it out in your chart. And if you need a chart, Jacqueline, I don't know, I've not seen your name out here before. You can go to my website, www.living-astrology.com, request your free human design chart or your free natal astrology chart, and you too will be able to see where things are happening in your life. Good morning, Sarah. Jupiter is my ruling planet, Judy says. What does this mean for me? If Jupiter is your ruling planet, you must be a Sagittarian or maybe Pisces, because Jupiter kind of co-rules that sign. And at this point, it really doesn't have much meaning. It just adds flavor, if you will. Now, last year would have had some definite meaning as it was an expansion year for you. Now, that expansion has moved off into contraction. Now you have to really crystallize what it is that you're going to act on based on what you learned about yourself last year. So I would say that is a way for you to look at that. Colleen, my Jupiter is 25 degrees Cancer in the 12th house. So you are one of those people that will be affected by the eclipse. Also in your 12th house, that's where it's going to be for me as well. I just don't have planets hanging around there. Luckily for me. For you, Jupiter is about now this kind of sort of the same energy that we were just talking about with Judy, crystallizing now, what is it that you are going to take action on? And for you, Colleen, what I would do, because the 12th house is also a house of self-sabotage, where we have fears or secret blocks or limitations, things that are holding us back for no good reason, take a look at that in your life. Be able to really see that if I want to let go of this or I want to move forward, I'm going to need to deal with this fear I have. And what do we do when we deal with fear? We push through it, we feel it, we agree, we acknowledge it, and we push through and do it anyway, right? Remember, that's the fear's on the spleen, and it's only in the now. If we feel it and we acknowledge it and we push through and do what we know we need to do anyway, then fear goes poof, just sort of like the wind, it's gone. So it doesn't mean it won't come back. And the next time that you face that kind of situation. So the fear for you might be in expanding. Cancer's protective, and it does things in a very protective, defensive sort of way. You might have to let down your defenses a bit in order to move forward. Hope that helps. But again, this is not an invitation to expand out all over the place, because Jupiter is not in Sagittarius anymore. It's in Capricorn. So it has to be more deliberate. It has to be more planned and methodical. It has to make sense. It has to be sustainable. It has to be resourceful. It has to be you being a good steward of your resources, your time, your energy, your money, all of those, your energy, all of that. All right. Judy says, thank you. Jacqueline, my Saturn is 13 degrees in the first house. My Saturn is 13 degrees in the first house. Jacqueline, I got to go back here. I don't remember what sign does the full moon eclipse affect a Cancer in our chart? So I'm not sure what sign that would put that in. So 13 degrees is not real close, actually, but I'm thinking you might mean that your Saturn is in Cancer, and if that's the case, the moon will pass that before it goes into the eclipse. So you might be in the clear there. Colleen says, thank you. That's what my gut was telling me. Definitely fear of expansion and letting go. Woohoo. Yes. Okay, Cancer. So definitely the moon then will pass over your natal placement of Saturn, and that may feel like a little bit of a melancholic dip in your energy. You may feel a little bit depressed or sad, or notice I said feel depressed. Not that you are depressed. Don't claim it as an I am, but you may be feeling more melancholic. And because this is happening in your first house, from what I understand here, then it's about what's incubating inside you, right? The melancholy has a purpose. The quiet, the solitude, the need for quiet or solitude has a purpose, and that purpose is in incubation or integration, one or the other, right? Maybe you've done a lot of growing over the previous year, and it's time for you to integrate all of that and to determine what the next steps are. And or you've already come through that portion, and now you're incubating what comes next. So I always think of the moon and Saturn because it does have that tendency to depress our energy, or to make us feel low or tired or more lethargic, or more melancholic, as a time when we are in the incubation of the new project, of what comes next. So in that quiet is a space for you to just let go of any kind of feeling like you must do anything, and just let it percolate. It will come back. It will come up. And when it does, then you'll feel more energized around what your next steps are. So hopefully that helps you. Yeah. Okay. Now, a couple of other things time-wise. Okay. Wow. I don't know where an hour goes every day. Let's talk about a couple of things that are happening in terms of the planetary energies that are dancing here. So we talked, tomorrow we're going to talk more about Uranus turning direct at the same time of the eclipse, or within hours of the eclipse. But today I want to talk about the fact that the Sun and Mercury are going to be in a conjunction during the lunar eclipse, because here is the Sun. This is a superior conjunction of the Sun and Mercury, meaning Mercury is in front of the Sun. When Mercury goes retrograde, the next conjunction is an inferior conjunction. It's behind the Sun. And this means that there's this new information that's being transcribed, right, by the Sun to Mercury. And that can create, at least for the short term, and at least through this period of time of the eclipse, a conflict between what's going on up here in your head and what's going on here in your heart. What you know to be true from in here versus what your mind might be chattering at you about what is happening, or what you should do, or what, all of this means. So in that, then, some of you may be feeling anxious or feeling anxiety. It is also a feeling. And often anxiety is a feeling that comes up when you are too much in your head. If you get down into your heart where love resides, then that anxiety can sort of just percolate away. It can sort of be absorbed into the wholeness of who you are, and you don't have to act on it, right? Anxiety can also come up from trying to force things to happen in your life. When we're dealing with human design, the ajna is often a source of anxiety, and the ajna, the second center down, is the place that we usually think of where thinking occurs, right? That's the mind. The analyzing, the critical thinking, the comparing and the contrasting and the data recall, and the conditioned mind thinks it has to think in a certain way and do things in a certain way, and it can create a lot of anxiety for us. But there's another center that creates anxiety. There's a couple of them, actually. There's another center is the will center. And the will center, let me see if I can pull out a human design chart here for those of you who may not be as familiar with your chart. I didn't pull a new one for today because nothing's changed really. Oh, of course you're not the one. Yeah, you are though. Here is a human design chart. And in fact, this is the one we used the other day where I was outlining the head center up here being a pressure center. The ajna is an awareness center. And here's where it is that a lot of anxiety can be triggered because of thinking, right? Getting into your head too much. Here is the will center or the heart center. And sometimes it's called the ego center. Essentially, this center is often where we enter into competition, where we enter into, it can exacerbate doingness, right? The need to do something, to push ourselves or pressure ourselves into doing more. And in that center, then it can create anxiety where we feel like if we don't push and to make something happen, it isn't going to happen. And so the anxiety here is when we're feeling like we need to do something or push into something, but we don't have a pathway open for us to do it, right? So here we can leap into things and take action, or we can literally burn ourselves out by keeping the wheels in motion just so that we don't feel the anxiety. So it's kind of a conundrum because on one hand, you have to release the doingness, but then you're going to feel that anxiety of, oh, I'm not doing. And on the other hand, if you lean into the doingness, then you're forcing or pushing, and that leads to burnout and anxiety as well. So you have to come to the middle ground here where you realize that whatever is yours will not be withheld from you. The appropriate authority or the appropriate energy or opportunity will be yours in the right timing. So that could be a whole nother, hour-long conversation that we could have about your human design. So there is also nervous tension that arises during this period of time when the planet Mercury is in a conjunction to the sun in a lunar eclipse window, right? Nervous tension and pressure. So if we're feeling that kind of pressure, it can cause us to leap into things just to relieve, to do anything to relieve that pressure or that stress. But you're not a human doing. You are a human being. And I would encourage all of you to really know who you are and know what's really right for you. Know your type, your strategy, and your authority in your human design so that you are not tempted to leap when you're not meant to leap, right? Where you can really understand what is true for you and what is authentic for you. All right. Questions about that? Jacqueline says, I feel more sleepy. Wasn't sure why. Now you know, right? That energy of the moon and Saturn can bring us to that. Good. Okay, I don't see any other questions. I'll wait for a couple of moments here. Let me just make sure I've gone through. No, we haven't talked about the Pleiadian-Earth energy of the day. Today is 5 seeing. Seeing energy in the Mayan calendar was Men, M-E-N, and Men represented the eagle. So it represents seeing from a higher perspective. The number 5 is the universal energy of change. So expect surprises or the unexpected. Expect the unexpected, especially because we're sitting here on the day before Uranus turns direct, right? A planet like Uranus, when it's wobbling between direct and retrograde motion, in the time when it stations direct, which doesn't happen until tomorrow. So right now it's at the very end of its retrograde cycle. It can create disturbance. It can create that sort of rebellion, that revolutionary sort of feeling, that shock feeling. So don't be surprised to be surprised, right? It's there. Today is the day for changes And the opportunity is to embrace something new that breaks an old pattern, right? That gets you out of an old stuck pattern of doing things the same way or reacting in the same way. So today's energy is really great for that kind of change up. This is universal energy. The 5 is the universal energy. All life forms subjected to change today. All planets, all universes in our solar system or in this universe, I'm not even sure how to term that, in this cosmos are subject to change today. The seeing energy is, it is really an invitation from the universe to rise up, to see things from a higher perspective, right? To become more objective, to step back out of your own drama and see things from a higher perspective, right? See things from all of the different sides, see things with a higher perspective. Like if you were, and I say this a lot, if you're in downtown of any major big city, and let's say downtown New York City, because there's a lot of buildings and they're tall and your vision is impeded by those buildings, right? But if you went to the top of the highest building and you were up there on the roof and you could see, just imagine how wide your perspective would be compared to being on the street level where you're not able to see. But we need both kinds of vision. This energy today reminds us that we need to see the higher perspective as well as the details. We need both. And it is an invitation for us to see in a new way, or see things with new eyes, with a new perspective, to see both those little details as well as the big picture. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to see how you and your self fit into the bigger picture of what's going on in the universe or the world, right? Seeing yourself as a part of something bigger, right? Not just struggling through your everyday things, your life, but it's all a part of a more harmonic plan, one that we don't always have the privilege of knowing, but that we are a part of it. So feeling a part of the bigger picture, but also feeling the details in who you are as a part of that picture. It's kind of poetic if you think about it that way. Jan says, I have right angle cross of the unexpected. Lovely. With Uranus sitting over my natal sun and Venus right now. So speaking of unexpected, but unexpected things in your relationships that maybe break open your heart or break open the heart of someone else for you. Maybe it is about breaking into abundance, because Venus also rules our money, our finances. So Uranus can bring things that are beneficial in their surprises as well, right? Sometimes the unexpected is a good thing. Sometimes the unexpected is interpreted by us as not so good, but with retrospect, we look back and we go, wow, that was the best thing that ever happened, right? It forced me to do something. It forced me to let go of something. So we want to be careful that we are not judging the unexpected as always negative. It can often be something very positive for us. Kathy Miller, good morning. Christine Erickson, good morning. Judy says, embrace the new to get a higher perspective. I love this. Exactly. And Kathy Miller, good morning. Just got up. It is very chilly this morning. Guess what, you guys? So I live very close to the water. So the temperatures for me are usually milder than they are maybe just 5 miles inland from where I live. But it can also be more rainy here. So there's always the trade-off, right? It's cooler in the summer, but it's a little bit warmer in the winter. Our high temperature on Tuesday here where I live, 22 degrees, the low 14. Talk about burr. That's not our usual. We do have Arctic outbreaks periodically where we get these cold temperatures, but it's been a long time since I've seen high temperatures not even be breaking into the mid-20s or breaking into the 30s. So for a few days next week, I'm going to be probably bundled up. Anyway, Marissa says, thank you, Janet. This was so informative. I'm so happy for you. Just more and more knowledge, right? Allison, have a great day, everyone. Judy says, thank you. Tom, good day, good day. It's good to see you, Tom. It's good to see that you're up this early. All right. I think that is it for me this morning. And again, tomorrow we'll be taking a look at the houses that your lunar eclipse may be in. Have your chart ready, or at least know what house it's in. We'll be talking about the new human design week, as tomorrow will be the final day and it's Friday. So we'll try to get some time in to do some readings for people with the oracle cards. And we're also going to talk about Uranus turning direct. So we have a busy day tomorrow as well. And then the weekend, right? The weekend report. So Rebecca, one last question here. Would you say, oh, that's old. How did it jump back like that? That's so bizarre. Rebecca says, as always, thank you. Great, great, great. And Jacqueline says, it's cold in New York and Saturday it will be 65. Wow, that is unusual for you guys. Usually we're always watching you guys fridge, the frigid temperatures, and somehow we get them. And Tom, I bet it's going to be cold where you are too. You're not that far from me, even though you're in Canada. It's going to be cold there too. All right, guys, that's it for me. See you all tomorrow morning. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.